What does it take for a murder to stop being just a news story and become a national trauma? In 2008 in London, the answer was simple. An innocent person had to die. Ben Kinsella wasn't a gangster. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was a 16-year-old with dreams who just months before his death wrote a letter to the Prime Minister, warning about the very violence that ultimately killed him. No one listened to his warnings, but his death, 11 stab wounds in 5 seconds over a trivial argument, was heard by the entire nation. This is the story of how a silenced victim's voice became the scream of a generation, of how one family's anger and pain forced politicians to act. Stay with me to see how one tragedy changed the United Kingdom forever. To understand why this tragedy resonated so deeply, we first need to know Ben, not as a symbol, but as a person. Born on October 27, 1991, Ben Michael Kinsella was a 16-year-old student at Holloway School. In the eyes of his loved ones, he was a popular, bright, and gentle boy. His sister, actress Brooke Kinsella, described him as one of the kindest and gentlest boys God ever created. He had typical teenage passions, but they painted a picture of a sensitive soul. He loved art, music, supported Arsenal Football Club, and adored his dog, Teddy. He dreamed of becoming a computer graphics designer and was already taking his first steps, working at a local internet cafe. His potential was tragically confirmed after his death, when it was revealed he had passed all his GCSE exams, achieving 2 A*S, 3 A's, 4 B's, and 1 C. A bright future awaited him. But what makes this story even more tragic is a twist of fate that will send a chill down your spine. A few months before his death, for an English class assignment, Ben wrote a letter. It was addressed to the then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Gordon Brown. In it, Ben expressed his concern about the rising knife violence in his community. He even proposed specific solutions: parenting classes, youth curfews, and bringing back youth clubs. He wrote a letter warning of the very threat that would take his life just a few months later. His voice was a prophetic warning that no one heard in time, and it all started with one absurdly stupid argument, with one question. The night of Saturday, June 28th, into Sunday, June 29th, 2008, Ben was at home with his older sisters, Brooke and Jade, as their parents were away for the weekend. His friends convinced him to go out to Shillabeer's Brasserie Bar near Caledonian Road Tube Station to celebrate the end of their exams. The atmosphere is relaxed until one sentence is uttered, thrown by an associate of Jade Braithwaite at one of Ben's friends. "What are you looking at?" That's it. That's all it took. A trivial dispute fueled by alcohol and toxic, youthful pride. Braithwaite, feeling disrespected, is kicked out of the bar, but his bruised ego demands revenge. He grabs his phone, he calls for backup. Michael Allan and Jerez Kika. The goal: find and punish those who had supposedly humiliated him. Around 2 a.m., Ben and his friends leave the bar and head home. They quickly realize they're being followed. Terrified, they start to run. And here, the key, tragic moment occurs. Witness accounts suggest that Ben, perhaps convinced of his innocence, and with no reason to flee, either stopped or was simply the slowest runner. He is cornered between 2 white vans. In front of him are 3 attackers, older and much bigger than him. His last words, remembered by witnesses, were a cry of innocence and utter confusion. "What are you coming at me for? I haven't done anything." A moment later, he's on the ground, kicked and beaten, and then comes the steel. In the space of just 5 seconds, he was stabbed 11 times. The brutality of the attack was staggering. 2 wounds pierced his lungs, causing them to collapse. Another, delivered with immense force, went through his 3rd rib, breaking it, and reached his heart. The pulmonary artery was also pierced, with some wounds reaching a depth of nearly 7 inches, 18 centimeters. Ben died in the early hours of the morning. He died because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and his killers decided to unleash their fury on the first person they could catch. His absolute 100% innocence, as the prosecutor later described it, shattered a psychological barrier. The barrier that allowed the public to believe that knife crime was a problem for gangs and criminals, something that didn't affect normal people. Suddenly, it became the problem of every parent in Britain. The fear became real and personal. Who were the people who did this? They weren't ghosts. They weren't anonymous criminals. They were a ticking time bomb that the justice system couldn't or wouldn't defuse. They were alleged members of a street gang called Market Massive. Their profiles are a case study in systemic failure. Michael Allain, 18, described as the gang's leader. His record included robberies, theft, and dealing hard drugs like cocaine and heroin. Just 3 months before Ben's murder, he had been released from a young offender institution and was under the supervision of a youth offending team. His electronic tag had been removed just weeks before the attack. The system had given him a green light. Jerez Kika, 18, the gang's soldier. His history of violence is shocking. He received his first police warning at age 11. That same year, he stabbed a 14-year-old boy in the back, but was not prosecuted due to his age. This is a fact worth repeating. As an 11-year-old, he stabbed another child and faced no consequences. At the time of Ben's murder, he was wanted by the police in connection with another robbery and stabbing that had occurred just 9 days earlier. He was a wanted man, yet he was walking the streets hunting for more victims. And finally, Jade Braithwaite, 19, the almost 2-meter-tall enforcer of the gang, whose bruised ego was the spark. Despite having aspirations to be a footballer and working as a youth coach, he already had a conviction for attempted robbery. At the time of the murder, he was serving a suspended sentence. This wasn't bad luck. It was a predictable consequence of systemic failure. These men were well known to the police, probation officers, and social services. And yet, they were allowed to cause this tragedy. The investigation, led by Detective Chief Inspector John McDonald, faced difficulties from the start. The perpetrators, whom McDonald described as 3 cowards older and bigger than Ben, destroyed their clothes, disposed of the murder weapons, and tried to intimidate witnesses. But they were caught. Forensic evidence proved crucial. 72 spots of Ben's blood were identified on Allain's jeans, and blood traces were also found on Kika's belt. The breakthrough, however, came from covert recordings made in a police van. The killers, convinced of their impunity, revealed key details of the crime, providing the prosecution with irrefutable proof. The 7-week trial at the Old Bailey was followed by the entire nation. In June 2009, the jury found all 3 guilty of murder. They were sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 19 years. The judge called their act a brutal, cowardly, and totally unjustified attack on a patently younger and smaller lone victim. As they were led from the dock, the convicts showed contempt, making mocking gestures towards Ben's family. Zero remorse. And for most true crime stories, this would be the end. But here, it's just the beginning. Ben's death was the spark that lit the fuse. His sister, Ben Kinsella, a well-known actress from the popular soap opera EastEnders, played a huge role. Thanks to her, Ben's tragedy had a human face and a powerful media reach that previous tragedies lacked. Ben was no longer an anonymous victim. He became the brother, son, and friend to millions who watched a tearful Brooke on their televisions. And people took to the streets. First, a spontaneous march of around 400 teenagers, organized by 16-year-old Brooke Dunford via Facebook. They walked in silence from Islington Town Hall to the crime scene. The only sound was a chanted cry, "Why are we here?" For Ben, no knives. The culmination of public anger was the People's March in September 2008. Thousands of protesters flooded London, demanding decisive action from politicians. Even Ben's funeral, attended by around 1,000 mourners, became a demonstration of grief and protest. The pressure was immense. The media turned the case into a symbol of broken Britain, a slogan describing the social ills of the time. The letter Ben wrote to the Prime Minister became a powerful tool in his family's hands, a symbol of the youth's voice. The government had to respond. They escalated Operation Blunt 2, a police initiative of mass stop and searches to detect knives. But the most enduring legacy of this tragedy wasn't born in Parliament. It was born from the pain and determination of one family. The Kinsella family did something extraordinary. They transformed their unimaginable pain into a constructive force for social change. Brooke Kinsella went from a grieving sister to one of the country's most effective anti-violence campaigners. She led marches, appeared in the media, wrote a book called Why Ben, and was asked by the government to review the effectiveness of prevention programs. For her work, she was awarded an MBE. In 2008, they founded the Ben Kinsella Trust. Its mission, to tackle knife crime through education and public campaigns. These weren't empty words. One of their first and biggest victories was lobbying for a change in the law. Thanks to their tireless efforts, in March 2010, the then Justice Secretary Jack Straw announced an increase in the starting minimum sentence for murder, with a knife from 15 to 25 years. The change quickly became known as Ben's Law. When announcing it, Jack Straw directly credited the Kinsella family's campaign for making him realize the devastation that knife crime can cause. The Trust's flagship project, however, is the Choices and Consequences educational program. It's an interactive exhibition that has been visited by over 25,000 young people. This isn't a boring lecture, it's a program that throws you into the middle of the events, showing the paths of both the victim and the perpetrator. The results? They are staggering. Before the workshop, 24% of young people believed carrying a knife offered protection. After the workshop, just 5%. Most importantly, 89% of all participants declare they will never carry a knife after completing the workshop. That is real change. The Trust has become a powerful force. They organize a Knife Crime Awareness Week, which in its first year reached 4.6 million people online. Recently, alongside actor Idris Elba, they launched the Don't Stop Your Future campaign, calling on the government to ban zombie knives and increase funding for youth services. Their demands were incorporated into the Labour Party's manifesto and are now being implemented by the new government. Interestingly, this story shows the limitations of relying solely on punishment. After Ben's Law was introduced, knife crime fell between 2011 and 2014. However, the trend later reversed, and rates began to rise again. This increase coincided with austerity policies that led to drastic cuts in funding for youth services and the closure of youth clubs, the very things Ben had called for in his letter to the Prime Minister. This suggests that while harsh sentences provide a sense of justice, they are not enough without investment in prevention. The Trust itself, with its emphasis on education, understands this perfectly. This is the legacy of Ben Kinsella, not just tougher sentences, but above all, the understanding that violence cannot be solved in a courtroom alone. It must be treated at its root, by investing in young people, healing trauma, and rebuilding the social fabric. Ben Kinsella's story shows that even from the darkest tragedy, light can emerge. It shows the strength of a family who refused to let their son's death be in vain. But it also shows that the fight against violence is a marathon, not a sprint. Despite all these efforts, the problem still exists. I'd like to know what you think. Do you believe that harsher sentences are an effective deterrent, or is the key to solving the problem solely through education and prevention, like the Ben Kinsella Trust does?